All right, Nick, let's talk about the USC Trojans. The Trojans, they've been on our radar a lot lately. We're talking about other teams going after guys the Trojans have been going after. We're talking about guys the Trojans have gotten. But when you break it down, when everything settles, they are number one. They have dominated this 2026 recruiting cycle, but it's not too late for them to look towards the future, and they're doing just that. And this latest move, I think Trojans fans are gonna love. We'll get into that in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, the Trojans absolutely dominant in the 2026 recruiting cycle. Best team, bar none. There's a huge gap between them and everybody else below them. And I think everybody knows that. The Trojans fans know that. This team has been really, really successful. But what is success if you're not able to capitalize on it? And I think that's exactly what they are doing going forward here. I think this is a big move, springboarding themselves into 2027 in that recruiting class as well. Let's get into this article. We can talk more about what it means and what it does for the Trojans on the other side. This is from SI.com. It says the USC Trojans are rolling on the recruiting front. No kidding. USC coach Lincoln Riley and general manager Chad Bowden has the men of Troy with the top recruiting class in the 2026 cycle, according to 24/7 Sports. With momentum building, the Trojans have begun keying in on a few of their top targets in the 2027 recruiting cycle. USC has been recently trending up for one of the best defensive backs in that 2027 class and five-star defensive back Duvet Williams. And he says, I was talking with general manager Chad Bowden not too long ago, and he wants me to set it off for USC's 2027 class. Williams said, Lincoln Riley is excited about me. They have something in store for me. And I think the way this is phrased, the way they have started this 2027 class off is very, very interesting. And it shows they know how to use their successes and able to get more successes in the future. This is a team, like we said, dominant 2026 class. I think when you hear about a team who has the number one recruiting class, you would be proud to be a part of it. But what if you springboard that into 2027 and say, hey, we're going to have another big class and we want you to be the face of that class. We want you to be the first player that we recruit for our 2027 class. I think that's a heck of a way to get started and a heck of a way to get a young kid to say, okay, I see what you've done. There's a lot of great things going on for the Trojans, but if you want me to be the face of one of the best recruiting teams this past cycle, you want me to be your crown jewel, the shining gem, at the first guy that you go to be in our 2027 class, I think that's really going to change some hearts and minds and get people to commit. And that's why I think this guy is trending to the Trojans. I think it's a really great strategy for them here. And I think it's going to do a lot of good stuff for them going forward. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this one, Nick. But before we get to you, Trojans fans, in the comments below, the 2026 recruiting class, the best in the land, a lot of great guys in it. But let us know, who's your favorite? Is there one guy that maybe is like a hidden gem that you like? Is there a top prospect that you think is going to bring the most impact to the team? Or is there somebody that you think was a good win for them? They battled it out, flip-flop, back and forth, and able to get the job done. Who do you like the best in this 2026 recruiting class? And let us know in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on this latest announcement out of the Trojans?
Yeah, look, when it comes to the USC Trojans, and we've talked about it a lot, they have been dominating when it comes to recruiting. They did it most of this offseason. In fact, we've recently covered some other teams that have done a pretty good job trying to battle back USC, but the Trojans have just kept coming back for more and more. In fact, they made some other moves over the past few weeks that were really astonishing as well. So they are crushing it on the recruiting front. And like you mentioned in that report, that trend is continuing in 2027. And we talk about momentum in the recruiting game all the time on this channel, right? You have a few good recruits, you build off of that. They bring in a few more guys, they bring in a few more guys. Recruits, see other great recruits are now going there, and you get momentum building, and that flywheel turns, and before long you spike, and suddenly you become a really great team. And it seems like it happens overnight, but it takes a few years to get there, right? It takes a few years to slowly consolidate and build momentum, and then you see the spike. And when you look at the data when it comes to USC, The spike, we are right in the middle of it, folks. Let's go to our first graphic here. This is looking at the average recruiting score according to 24/7 Sports for the last 3 recruiting cycles for the USC Trojans. This is, again, like I said, the average score of each recruit. You can see in 2024, it was a little north of 90. In 2025, a little south of 90, but basically right at 90. And then 2026, that's actually a pretty big delta, that 2 point spread. 2 points is basically the difference between having the best recruiting class and like the 15th best. So when you see a 2 point spread, that's a pretty significant spike. And when you go to the overall rankings over the same time frame, we see a very similar spike as well. If you don't mind throwing that up on the screen, you can see in 2024, they were about 16th in overall recruiting rankings. In 2025, they were about 13th. And then 2026, like you mentioned, number one, you see that spike once again. Now, rankings are like golf, lower is better. So even though it's a downward spike, that's really a positive trend. And if you go back to the very first graphic here to just really visualize this, I want you guys to focus on 2024, 2025. It's flat, right? It's consolidating. And then 2026, we see the spike. We see that momentum. What does this remind me of? This reminds me of that famous mathematical exponential function. If you want to go ahead and throw that up on the screen as well. This is exactly what the USC Trojans are hitting right now. You can see how it's low for a very long time, and then suddenly it spikes and it goes vertical very, very quickly on the far right of the graph. That's what the USC Trojans are in right now in terms of building talent for this team. A lot of people look at USC and they're just like, oh, wow, they had a really good recruiting season, right? 2026 is really good. But now that you see this news for the 2027 cycle, guys, this is not an indication of USC having a 1 year just bump. They had a really great year in 2026. They are in the middle of an exponential swing upward in terms of recruiting. And once you get on this exponential, once that flywheel is turning, it is almost impossible to stop. Ask Nick Saban in Alabama, once they got on that exponential recruiting pipeline, how they were beaten. They almost never were. How about Kirby Smart in Georgia for the better part of a half decade, right? The Ohio State Buckeyes for the better part of 15 years in terms of dominating the Big Ten under Urban Meyer in the first few years of Ryan Day. When it came to recruiting in that conference, they just had so much momentum. They were basically unstoppable. It took Jim Harbaugh to come in and capture his own momentum after 6, 7 years of building it to knock off the Buckeyes. The USC Trojans right now under Lincoln Riley and Bowden, like you mentioned there in your reporting, are in the middle of that spike. They've got the momentum. That flywheel is turning. This is incredibly important. This kind of momentum is not something that's easily stopped. I thought maybe a week or so ago with some of the moves a team like Oregon has made in terms of going into Los Angeles and getting some big name recruits, I was like, is this a sign? Maybe it was just a spike for USC and things will normalize. No, we see the moves that happen after. Now we hear this reports about this 2027 prospect. The momentum, the flywheel, the exponential, whatever you want to call it, behind this USC recruiting pipeline is just ramping faster and faster. It seems like a runaway train at this point. What does that mean, USC, long term? When you look at all these graphs, all these numbers, it means wins. It means titles. It means deep playoff runs. It means Lincoln Riley bringing a championship back to Los Angeles.
Yeah, and again, I think, that's the thing that people forget. And I think we're all so quick to judge in the new era that we're in of just the world, the instant gratification. Everybody wants everything at the tip of their finger. They want to be able to order something on Amazon and get it here that same day or next day. Next day is even too slow sometimes. People want to be here the same day. There's all of this instant gratification. I think people have forgotten that things like a program rebuild, things like changing the culture of a team, it takes time and it takes a good amount of time. It doesn't get done in 2 years. It takes a few years of constant work, like you said, constant flat. The flat takes a long time, and then eventually, when you get your base set enough, when you get the coaching staff that USC has in place, when you have the recruits that they are starting to get, when you see the success of players from their team go to the NFL, things like that start to build a little bit. That's when you get it says, like, you hear the old adage, overnight success. Everyone that's been, quote unquote, named in overnight success will tell you it never happened overnight. They did years of work, years of preparation, and then all of a sudden it popped, but it didn't happen overnight for them. There's a long time beforehand where they didn't even know if it was going to work out or not. So Lincoln Riley and his staff here building things up, preparing, building the foundation, getting the right coaching staff in place, getting the other recruits in place, getting the right quarterbacks to come to the school, start the buzz, start the trend, seeing all the success that USC has. And now we're starting to see them get the success in 2026 and say, okay, we've spiked. Let's continue the spike. Let's keep it going into the out years. Let's keep 2027 going. Let's use our advantages to our advantage. And I think this has been really, really great for the Trojans so far. And like you said, I think this is how they do it. This is how they bring championships back to California for the Trojans. I think this is how they get things done. Los Angeles is going to be happy. The Trojans are there because this is a team spiking. They're moving their ways back up. I think it's going to be a really exciting time to be a Trojans fan.